Welcome to Financial Behavior Thought Leaders. I'm Mary, and this podcast takes you behind the scenes with top speakers in financial services. So, whether you're a financial advisor booking a client event, an event planner looking for the perfect keynote, or a financial professional wanting to learn from industry thought leaders, you're in the right place. Today, we're featuring Lazetta Rainey Braxton, one of Financial Behavior Keynote Group's exclusive speakers. We'll explore her keynote, how to stay relevant in an increasingly diverse environment, and talk about how understanding cultural competency helps advisors engage more effectively with clients from every background. Welcome, Lazetta. I'm so glad you're here.
So I'm so glad to be here with you, Mary.
Me too. So, Lazetta, you have been doing this for a long time. I want to hear the story of what brought you on stage in the first place. How did you start your speaking career?
Well, honestly, I started it in church.
I believe it.
Being comfortable reading the announcements and then eventually doing, Youth Sunday I won't call it a preacher, but I'll just say as a speaker. And then the evolution of moving from speaking within the church to speaking within leadership positions in high school and then in college. A lot of practicing going on there.
Hmm.
And then I married a preacher. Oh my gosh, at 23. So then I got some in-house training, which was also very intimidating. So I never
Oh,
ever really saw myself as a speaker per se.
yeah.
Just one practicing sharing what I was passionate about.
Yeah.
It became more formal as I had more opportunities that people appreciated my energy and wanted me to share my knowledge. And if you put those two together, then it becomes an official speaker.
Love that because I love that part about you, and I love that you're so open to sharing it. I also love the fact that you've not just been speaking using your own voice, which I think has been an evolution for you, but you've also really empowered others to use their voice. Talk to me a little bit about that.
The empowerment of using your voice, and it goes from one-on-one to, being on social media where you could have thousands or hundred thousands, of viewers or of followers. And it's the confidence that you believe that what you have to say and what you're passionately have to say matters to
Mm.
you, and can be transformative for the people who are hearing what you're going through. In this world, it feels like you're alone, and really the only way to test it is to share your voice and see who responds.
Yeah. And I'm very proud of you. I remember meeting you for the very first time years, probably decades ago at this point, and just you've always been that way where you've been open and inviting but always leading too. And I think that that has caught up from those around you. I think I would say if there were three things that I could really say that your work has accompanied its leadership, it would be culture and inclusion, and specifically in financial services. And so tell me more, why do those things matter so much for advisors right now?
I'm going to speak for how society is identifying me through labels, and one is gender, female,
Mm,
and so we have statistics about what females earn and what positions they hold, and it really lags white males. Then you add another context, a layer of my race, which is a social construction as well too, but also one that is visual. And so if you combine just those two aspects of being female, visual, black, visual, and the history of this country when it comes to in this country, specifically the United States, for which I was born, and a lot of generations um, were here because of the slave trade. That there are people out there to want to feel in underrepresented populations that their story and their lives matter, that their life and livelihoods are important. And if you are one that wants to share your craft as a financial planner, um, it's important to know who you can serve. who you are competent enough to serve, and be able to feel confident that you are being the best fiduciary for them that you can, and be very aware of the challenges that are systematic that impacts one's finances.
Oh my goodness, there's so many different directions we can go with this, but I'm going to use the lens of your keynote because I think that we ought to stay centered in how that really means. Let me read the title of your keynote is How to Stay Relevant in an Increasingly Diverse Environment. So let's start off with help me understand what the core message is and what the key takeaway is from this
Yes.
experience.
Core message: by the year 2050, according to the Census Bureau, the US will be a racial mosaic. And that means, in terms of race as an identity, you're going to have a lot of people that identify as biracial.
Hmm.
And if we have changing demographics, that also means we have changing consumer demographics, clients, the people that you serve. So, one of the questions that I start with: if you died and were able to come back to life, would you want to come back as a Black person? So that helps the
Interesting.
audience immediately think about being in someone else's shoes as a starting point, to have some sensitivity to some of the challenges, and then say, "Oh, okay, so when redlining happened, and it might
Yeah.
look that way again in terms of access to housing, access to jobs, how does that impact a client's financial plan and their comfort level in explaining to you on the other end that charitable giving to their churches is very important, even if it squeezes their budget?" Right. So it's about serving the client well, and the increasingly diversity is a path that the Census Bureau is projecting, and is happening.
Well, and I think we're already seeing that in another demographic that you've already mentioned, and that is gender, right? And that is even a shorter timeline that we're seeing this transition of wealth from men into women's hands by 2030. And then I love what you added. That's such a even further rich dialogue to realize another 20 years is going to be even more diverse than that. Now, talk to me. What is so compelling for people to really understand, because I think a lot of people will come and say, "Yeah, yeah, I serve women, I serve people of all races and colors," but I don't think we've really broken it down to the heart or the core. What is a differentiator that really sets that apart and makes it important for advisors to understand who's sitting across the desk from them?
It's the pool of potential clients, right?
Mhm.
I say in my presentation, be true to you. If you're mostly comfortable with the people that look like you, and are aware of some of your traditions, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't false advertise.
Yeah.
And also don't say derogatory things just because you are of a different mindset, right? Allow
Mhm.
space to happen. I'm going to be honest. Majority of my clients who are attracted to me are African American Black clients, because they identify with the images that I have on my website, the work that I write about. It attracts them. And I also have clients that are not identified as Black or African American, yet they have a social justice orientation to them because they appreciate my inclusivity. Now, when it
Mhm.
comes to financial planning, um, and my speaking, it's universal. What I do is absolutely universal. What I think differentiates me per se is because I do have the perspective for working with the majority, assimilation, and I don't like to use the language of minority, um, but I would say underserved and underrepresented, which makes me very versatile in any type of client that I can serve. And that's what I'm also saying for those who um, are committed to their profession and their craft. You have to be able, even if you decide not to be relevant to your client, and be able to listen and do the research you need to do to better understand their position, their goals, and their values.
So you've got a set of people who are saying, "Well, these are my clients. I want people who think, look, and act like me." And then to the other extreme, like you said, "I've already got my clients. This is good." What about those that are in the middle that are saying, I'm open to learning more. I need to be more culturally aware. I need to be more ungender biased. How do you help those that are somewhere in the middle that are wanting to become more apt at this?
And I'm going to answer your question. And I also want to go back to a case study that just
Great.
came to my mind that I also mentioned in my presentation as well. My keynote is the what we saw so publicly with Harry and Meghan Markle,
Yeah.
right? So we had and we saw, I mean, it's media, so we don't really know, but we saw maybe the queen at the time that she was living not too fond of the marriage and them deciding to make their own money, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because they had different values than the monarch had at the time, and it seems continuing to be.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking the clients, um, I'm asking advisors if you were presented with that degree of wealth and wealth transfer, would you be prepared, right, to address them? So going back to your question, you're talking about the population who says, "I see what's happening here.
Mhm.
I don't want to be
Yes.
caught off guard." Pun intended for the monarch. um, and so this is what I did. Even I had to do. I got books that were relevant for the white community. I took courses through eCornell on diversity and inclusion so that my lens would not just be only through the lens of being a Black female, primarily in terms of my identity structure. So even for me, as I'm speaking with the clients, I have to understand the sensitivities of what information they were shared or what education or what books they were exposed to so that I can even communicate with populations that are dissimilar than I am. So if I would have to sum it up, educate yourself, listen more, show vulnerability, and invite conversation.
Yeah. No, those are great tools and takeaways. Is there a recommended, like, if you were to say there's one thing, if someone listening to this said, if there were just one thing I could do better, Lizetta, of all the things that you've mentioned, what would that one thing be to be a little more aware culturally and diverse?
One of the easiest ways to do it is watch movies pertaining to historical events.
That's a great idea.
Mhm. And there are a lot of them, particularly for the African American community. A lot of people didn't want to talk about slavery, but the system of slavery and oppression is kind of what we're seeing now, where certain populations are getting different treatment. We are seeing laws that impact financially a lot of different folks, and so
Mhm.
if you open yourself, and even for I have a lot of friends across different religions have experienced oppression in different ways through their lineage. If people were more open um, without the fear, obligation, guilt, and shame fogs of what has happened, and studied it and see its relevancy, then I think the engagement would be different um, and easier because there will be a point of understanding and similar to some degree, cycles that impact populations repeatedly over and over again.
Yeah. No, such good. So I'm hearing books, I'm hearing movies, and I would even add there's travel, right? Of just getting out of your space and your comfort zone to be able to feel, to walk literally in the shoes of someone unlike you. How has that affected you as you've traveled?
So let me start by saying I'm from a very rural town in Virginia, and I think it was probably my middle school years where I actually saw ethnicity other than black or white. And so when I graduated from high school and went to college, University of Virginia, I decided to study abroad in Spain. It was my
Oh.
first time in a train, a plane, a boat, a ferry. And my dad was just so upset with me because I made the decision and I financed it himself. And he was mostly scared because he knew he couldn't rescue me.
Mhm.
And I would love to see people have more courage in being in places that are uncomfortable, to sit with being uncomfortable. There are so many times where I am the only Black person in the audience, engaged, and so this feeling of being uncomfortable was something that I just constantly had to adjust to. So, why not share the wealth?
Yeah,
And understanding and, yeah, exercise the gift of courage.
I love that. Now, let me ask you a flip question to that. You've been in several situations that you've been uncomfortable. How could someone like myself help you feel more comfortable? Because I think there's the other side of it, of the inclusion portion of it. How do we become more inclusive and help others feel comfortable?
I've been using a hashtag doing the work.
Hmm.
And the more that people do their internal work, they calm their nervous system, right? The vagus nerve, right? Which allows you to receive all different types of energy. I'm going to be honest. There were some very high level conversations where people are like, you need to be calm. No, I'm angry as hell.
Hmm.
And I'm justifiably should be, and you should be able to handle my heat,
Yep.
so I
Yep.
can work through my feelings, and they're
Yeah.
real legitimate feelings based on the treatment of
Yeah.
being oppressed, right?
Yeah.
And so, if someone is really trying to be inclusive, then you have to have the capacity and the self awareness to be able to be inclusive.
Well, and being open to allowing them to have those feelings, right? I think sometimes from someone who tries to make everyone get along, right? It's being coming comfortable with emotions, becoming comfortable with the client who's literally crying across their desk, even though that makes you uncomfortable. It's becoming comfortable with the client who gets angry, becoming comfortable with the client who maybe doesn't receive information or the news you're talking about in the same way you would, and being okay with that, like understanding. Now be careful here, right? Set your own boundaries, but being a more open to that broad spectrum of emotion that we feel as humans.
Yeah. So, as a case in point for me, I'm really getting used to pronoun usage.
Mhm.
And so I am working very hard because I am a Gen Xer, and the use of pronouns have really been more emphasized in the last decade or so. So it takes
Mhm.
practice. And I've given my client permission. I'm like, if I use the right pronoun, you want to wave your hand, right? So giving the permission to say in a space that I'm not probably always going to get it right, but I'm doing my best to, and I need your help in being better at this.
Man, you just nailed it because the other side of that is forgiveness, right? And being able to
Yep.
let go and forgive. We're human. We're going to mess up. We're going to bump into each other. You're not going to be perfect. So, this isn't, I love that you said, like, you've taken courses, you've read books, you've done all that, and yet you still don't do it perfectly. And so, allowing that space to say, but you're trying. It's okay. Keep trying.
And I'm sorry. I
Mm,
apologize and really mean that and pause on it. Not
I love that
ramroded.
part.
Um, and what we're saying, which is very much a part of my keynote, right, is allowing people in their own space in the audience to think about the scenarios where they're like, "Whew, I really put my foot in my mouth," or "Wow, no, I honestly wouldn't want to be Black coming back. And what does that mean?" And it's okay, right? And
Right.
I said, I'd come back again, even with all the pressure. I love, being who I am. And so I appreciate, particularly in financial services, allowing me to have this conversation, and they see the business case
Hmm.
for it, and space for moral leadership.
Amen. Amen. Well, I have to say, if you want a deeper dive and get the full picture of how to be more culturally aware, you've got to download Lizetta's speaker sheet at financialbehaviorthoughtleaders.com. Now, Lizetta, before we wrap up, I want to go a little behind the scenes with you for a minute. What is something that most audiences don't know about you?
What a lot of people may or may not have caught in my social media is that I am a big believer in therapy. And I want to add to that conversation about therapy is about mental health awareness.
Mhm.
I also uh, truly believe and know that I'm neurodivergent, which is a and I don't like the word disability in any way. It's it's different for me to accept because it's a part of that exclusion, as well too, that it's a disability because it's actually has been a strength for me. So when people
Mhm.
ask, "How are you able to do all that you've done for the industry and volunteer and work and raise your family, and still get sleep at night?" And I'm like, I couldn't explain it before, and then I realized it's just like, it's how I'm wired. And a lot of people misinterpret, people who are neurodivergent, maybe on the spectrum for autism or autistic, that there is something that is a deficit. It's just being able to know who you are and have the resources you need to be the best version of yourself. So I would honestly really say that if people really thought about services that help people be their best self, and we're talking about inclusion, which is dealing with identity work, you
Mhm.
need specialists to really help you work through because even I had to work through trauma related to knowing what happened to my ancestors, not being bitter, looking at my
Yeah.
skin complexion and knowing that the white part of me was due to slave. I look at that slavery
Oh,
every day, right? And so, in order to be able to do the work, it starts with within. So now, not so much behind the scenes, but because I'm, focus on financial health, which is also wealth, which is also mental health as well too.
yeah.
So big advocate for it.
Well, and just like you said before, but we as financial planners would expect someone to go if they had financial problems, they'd go to an expert. Why would we not do the same? Right?
Right.
And we all have that. I love that you're such a champion of inner work. Every time I get to talk to you, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're looking for a speaker who can help your organization create meaningful change, build inclusive leadership, and stay relevant in an increasingly diverse environment, you can learn more and book Lazetta Braxton at keynote.financial. Thank you for joining us on Financial Behavior Thought Leaders. We'll be back soon with more conversations that bring you closer to the leading voices in financial services.